Dunkachino!
You know, celebrities, they love themselves, especially when they get to show up as themselves in movies and TV. Nothing better than being so famous or notable that you can just show up in a movie and audiences will be like, yo, that's the guy in the thing. I love this. Anyway, let's check out a bunch and maybe learn a thing or two about the subtle art of celebrity cameos.
Who are you?
I'm David Hasselhoff.
Hooray!
And we gotta start with one of the most delightful and shocking cameos from the last decade, Bill Murray in Zombieland. What's that? It came out in 2009? What do you mean that was more than a decade ago? Oh God, where did all this gray hair come from? Anyway, Bill shows up to do illicit drugs, reenact Ghostbusters, and die.
Oh my God, I can't believe I shot Bill Murray. And
he's endlessly charming while doing it, especially when he finally takes down the big Garfield industrial complex.
So do you have any regrets?
Garfield, maybe?
Believe it or not, Murray's cameo was actually a last-minute solution. The filmmakers wanted a big-name cameo to show up, but didn't have anyone, even while they were already shooting, and almost gave up in favor of just having our gang of quirky heroes kill a bunch of zombies in the mansion. Then they did what they should have done in the first place. They asked Woody Harrelson. He offered to call his friends Dustin Hoffman and Bill Murray. Hoffman wasn't available, so boom! Murray added another role to his pop culture repertoire. Taking a dip into TV for a moment, The X-Files springs to mind as one of those great shows that didn't necessarily lend itself to famous peeps playing themselves. However, for the fan favorite and totally bonkers episode Jose Chung's From Outer Space, writer Darren Morgan had Johnny Cash in mind to play one of the two men in black in the story, within the episode. That obviously didn't happen, and so the late Jeopardy host Alex Trebek plays the brief but hilarious role in Scully's telling of Mulder's story.
Mulder didn't say that it was Alex Trebek, and it was just someone that looked incredibly like him.
Also, Jesse Ventura was there. A legit king of cameos, Stan Lee has played himself a few times, but notably cameos as himself reading his lines for a cameo as himself in Mallrats in Captain Marvel. You follow me? Mallrats director Kevin Smith cast Stan Lee, a childhood hero of his, to help Jason Lee's Brody with his love life, and the role left such an impact that when it came to have Stan Lee show up in their 90s period piece, Marvel just had to pay tribute by having him show up practicing his lines in Captain Marvel. Of course, the whole reason he's in Mallrats is because he created the famous heroes in the Marvel Universe, which are in turn real in the MCU, where Stan Lee is playing himself. Oh no, my brain is pooping. Now this next one had the meme machine running wild when it popped up on Netflix back in the long ago of 2019, Keanu Reeves in Always Be My Maybe. This was at the height of Reeves' popularity, by which I mean the period in which we currently live, and so to have the one and only John Wick walk in to show up Randall Park worked a lot of magic for the film's marketing. According to Netflix, 32 million people tuned in to watch in the first 4 weeks. And while sure, the film itself is a lot of fun and it's charming and all that, Reeves playing Reeves brought the masses, and the memes.
That's fine. I'd kill you too, Keanu. I'd kill you just for fun, even if I didn't have to.
If nobody has any objections, David Bowie in Zoolander. When you absolutely must have the best last-minute judge for a walk-off between two titans of male modeling, you gotta go with the man who sold the world. Zoolander is heavy on the celebrity cameos, with everyone from Christian Slater to a certain former president of the United States showing up to play themselves. Also Billy Zane, who, is cool and all, but aside from looking great in purple tights, being a fun piece of Twin Peaks trivia, and being in the best horror movie of the 90s, doesn't quite measure up to Ziggy freakin' Stardust.
Disqualified.
Next up, we have to talk about the tragedy of Al Pacino. Oh, Al. Oh, Al. Ugh. Just roll the clip.
Dunkachino?
Don't mind if I do!
Everyone wants my Dunkachino. Can't get enough of my Dunkachino.
Burn this. This must never be seen.
Look, far be it for me to begrudge a man having a little fun and collecting a paycheck. But man, watching Michael Corleone shill for Dunkin Donuts in the middle of one of Adam Sandler's biggest train wrecks is borderline surreal. Like, I'm shocked David Lynch didn't direct a behind-the-scenes documentary on the making of just Al Pacino's multiple scenes in Jack and Jill. It's Oh my, get it away. Let's move on. The pop culture phenomenon that is Neil Patrick Harris started here in the Harold and Kumar trilogy, wherein Doogie Hauser plays a highly fictionalized, womanizing, drug-addicted version of himself. Or at least we hope it's fictionalized. Dude was wild. He stole Harold and Kumar's car while tripping on shrooms, got shot by prostitutes, well, shot by one prostitute, but whatever. He got kicked out of heaven and gave the boys a Christmas tree and a waffle bot. You know, maybe NPH ain't such a bad guy after all. I mean, you know, when he's not faking his homosexuality and begging like a dog for baggies of crack.
Hey, Merry Christmas, guys. We'll see you in the fourth one.
Like NPH, former Baywatch and Knight Rider star David Hasselhoff is more meme than man now, and he's been more than happy to cash in on that. Notably, he, plays a selfish, washed-up version of himself in Piranha 3D, wherein he is less than helpful while a water park is turned into a bloodbath. I mean, okay, yeah, he does save that one kid. So, like, points for basic humanity, Dave. Meanwhile, in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, he lends a helping Hoff to a sponge and its starfish friend on their dangerous journey home. A Hoff ex machina, if you will. Another washed-up actor playing a washed-up actor. This one was a big happy surprise for JCVD fans back in 2008, Jean-Claude Van Damme in, well, JCVD. The tale of a washed-up actor from Brussels who must prove himself when stuck in the middle of a bank robbery. For his role, Van Damme turned to, well, himself and the many problems he dealt with, most notably his cocaine addiction in the 90s and of course his slide from famous action hero to a pop culture relic. The performance was praised by critics and he even got to be the villain in The Expendables 2 and voiced Master Croc in the Kung Fu Panda films. In Fighting with My Family, Dwayne Johnson shows up as himself to give a little advice to our up-and-coming wrestlers Zack and Saraya, the latter of whom, played by Florence Pugh, goes on to become WWE superstar Paige. Johnson has an interesting methodology for inspiring them.
Please, sir, may I have some more advice, sir? You want some advice? Here's the rock advice. Shut your mouth!
Meanwhile, the likes of The Miz, Sheamus, and The Big Show also make quick appearances. Another sports hero, in this case not turned movie star, Dan Marino shows up in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective as himself. The former Miami Dolphins quarterback is a major part of the first Ace Ventura's plot, and even becomes the perfect damsel in distress during the third act. Oddly enough, he almost bailed on the project entirely and even scheduled a meeting with Jim Carrey at a restaurant to tell him he was out. And then Carrey arrived in full Pet Detective regalia, and well, they say Dan Marino's heart grew 3 sizes that day, and he changed his tune. The Beatles wound up with quite a few on-screen roles, perhaps most notably as themselves in A Hard Day's Night, Yellow Submarine, and the more Ringo-centric Help. Hard Day's Night is perhaps the more realistic of the bunch, since it basically just follows them around on tour as they get into various wacky musician antics and run away from their adoring fans. And while I personally have a soft spot for Help, it can't be denied that Hard Day's Night is the one that's gone down as one of the greatest movies of all time. Heck, even Roger Ebert said so. As he states at the top of his review for the film, it was also the film that transformed them into true cultural icons, and they didn't even have to pretend to be other people. Now, it shouldn't be too surprising that famed magicians and callers out of Bulldukie, Penn Teller star in Penn Teller Get Killed as themselves. In fact, it's about as surprising as the ending, which, spoilers I guess if you have ever seen the title or watched this video. Anywho, while I have always enjoyed this one, it was not exactly a hit with critics or audiences, and just to add salt to the wound, it was also the last feature directorial effort from Bonnie and Clyde director Arthur Penn. Yikes, what a punchline. Now here's one you don't see too often, a sports hero starring as himself in his own biopic. Number 42 himself, Jackie Robinson, starred in, well, The Jackie Robinson Story, back in 1950. He is admittedly no Chadwick Boseman, but it's pretty cool to see a sports hero playing himself in his own life story, which he filmed in the off-season after his 3rd season with the Dodgers. This movie's in the public domain, by the way, so no excuses for not checking out this fascinating little relic of the sports movie genre. Celebrities seem to really enjoy playing douchey versions of themselves, and Michael Cera is no exception. In This Is the End, lots of notable Hollywood actors play themselves. Heck, there's one I still feel bad spoiling, his cameo's that good. James Franco, Jonah Hill, Seth Rogen, Jay Baruchel. Basically, the whole cast plays a version of themselves, but for my money, the best one has to be Michael Cera, who brings some next-level douchebaggery to his performance. He even smacks Rihanna's butt and gets smacked down in the process. The whole first act is basically just Cera being a drug-addicted a-hole, and so it's incredibly gratifying when he's the first to die a horrible death. Perhaps the most famous game show host cameo of all time, in Happy Gilmore, we get to see Bob Barker live the 90s dream and beat the hell out of Adam Sandler after Sandler's failed hockey player turned golfer doesn't take kindly to Barker criticizing his abilities on screen. Happy throws the first punch, only to get decimated by the host of The Price is Right. Of course, I have to include the greatest film of all time in this list thanks to a short and villainous turn from Total Request Live's very own Carson Daly, who spends basically all his runtime on attempted murder in the 2001 film Josie and the Pussycats. Turns out the music industry is more cutthroat than we could even imagine, as Carson and other Carson try to get rid of Melody and Val, whom Carson's boss Fiona, played by a lisping, scenery-chewing Parker Posey, wants out of the titular band so she can turn Josie into a one-woman show. It's just one of the many relics of the late 90s, early 2000s that make Josie and the Pussycats both delightful and nostalgic. Well, at least for elderly people like me.
I'm Leonard Maltin, and this is the movie Police.
Gremlins 2 is filled with outrageous cameos, but Leonard Maltin getting his comeuppance for criticizing the original Joe Dante classic is probably one of the best. If there's one better, it's actually made up of two cameos, Hulk Hogan and John Wayne, depending on which version you see. The one seen in theaters featured Hulk Hogan in a movie theater, appropriately enough, threatening a bunch of gremlins in the projection booth. For the VHS release, the filmmakers got cute and switched the scene out for one of John Wayne, who through archival footage appears to do battle with the gremlins and force them back into their own movie. For the novelization, the gremlins attack the author. A whole bunch of wacky versions for a very wacky flick.
Sorry, folks. It won't happen again.
Zoe Bell isn't necessarily a big-time celebrity known to any old schmo in the street, but the stuntwoman is prolific in her industry, having notably doubled Uma Thurman in the Kill Bill movies and showing up in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to chew out Brad Pitt. And she wound up cast as herself in Death Proof, Quentin Tarantino's half of 2007's ill-fated but freaking awesome Grindhouse. She and her fellow industry friends contend with Kurt Russell's villainous stuntman Mike, and as part of the epic car chase, Bell shows everyone how a real stuntwoman handles a high-speed situation. In an interesting and perhaps unwise in retrospect move, Clint Eastwood's The 1517 to Paris pulled a Jackie Robinson and cast the real-life soldiers who took down a terrorist on a train to Paris in 2015. While the train attack was certainly ripe for a cinematic adaptation, the film itself falters by casting real-life heroes Spencer Stone, Anthony Sadler, and Alex Skarlatos, as well as several others involved in the incident as themselves. While it's a cool experiment and the intention is noble enough, it also proves that experience and acting chops are not the same thing. Hey kids, it's Mark Hamill. In Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Hamill follows up his Star Wars and Joker fame by taking on the mantle of, this villain whose name I'm not sure I can say in Screen Rant videos. Anyway, he's hilarious, and he's Mark freaking Hamill, and of course, since he's in a Kevin Smith movie, we've got to have ourselves an overt reference to that space battle franchise he's so famous for. In Wim Wenders' Wings of Desire, Peter Falk shows up and proves what I've been saying for years. Dude was a total angel. No, really. Not only is Peter Falk very obviously just playing Peter Falk, but in the film, he's an angel who decided to become human and enjoy himself by, becoming Columbo. It's a weird flick. In United 93, director Paul Greengrass pulled off a more successful version of Eastwood's later attempts at casting real-life people from recent historical events. Ben Sliney, the actual dude who was giving orders at the United States Federal Aviation Administration, plays himself. And he's pretty good! Now let's back off from national treasures and real-world heroes for a second. See, it's one thing to be a con man. It's another thing to get a movie made about your life. But ooh boy! It's a whole other thing to be a con man starring as yourself in a movie about your life that was in turn made by conning your church out of money. Yep, that happened. Barry Minkow, who is perhaps most famous for committing fraud as a pastor after going to jail for orchestrating a massive Ponzi scheme, funded a movie about his own life in which he starred as himself. Once his newest crimes came to light, the film had to be shelved for a while, until the director managed to salvage it with additional footage and get it released in 2018. Finally, let's bring in some recent events by going back to a 2012 episode of Parks and Recreation, wherein Ben surprises Leslie with her biggest crush, none other than Vice President Joe Biden.
Leslie, no, welcome.
my name just came out of your mouth.
Well, yeah, it did.
She reacts, well, like you'd expect. And Joe, you know, he runs his lines together a bit, but not bad. That kid's going places.
You don't let anything happen to him, do you understand me? He is precious cargo.
Anyway, I could go on, but suffice it to say, there are a whole lot of celebrities, be they actors, musicians, sports heroes, or even future presidents, who have played themselves in movies and TV. Fun fact, Happy Gilmore's very own Bob Barker trained to fight with his neighbor Chuck Norris, who famously cameoed as himself in Dodgeball. Didn't beat up Vince Vaughn though, so whatever.